Welcome to the Bear Collective podcast, where we talk all things relationships and self-connection. We empower you to take what you need and leave what we don't. Thank you for listening, watching, and subscribing. Please do those things.
It helps the algorithm.
That damn algorithm, right?
You know it helps the algorithm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone's on the media these days.
They are.
Yes.
Today,
Mm.
we are talking about what you are not changing, you are choosing.
Mm. Mm. That there can be a little bit of a gut punch moment with that.
Simple but punchy.
Yeah.
Across any area of your life, that can be applied.
What's the first thing that comes to mind for you when you say that?
For me, it's something that I've tried to be conscious of shifting over the last, probably say more consciously over the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that is getting into a space of actually from growth and evolution, self-growth, self-evolution, is to not wait until something's really painful to change.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's another saying that if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
However, most people ignore those early warning signs, those feather tickles that kind of indicate, hey, there needs to be a new level to whatever this experience is that you're going through.
Yeah, it's time to make a change and a shift.
Make a change.
Do you know that's super interesting? Because you see people with symptoms similar to depression and anxiety, and they've been quite ongoing for some people.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the time that can really shift the minute they make a life change. They might decide oh, this relationship's not for me, or, oh, wow, I'm really not happy in my job, am I? Or, I really need to change towns. I really just need a sea change. And from that moment, all the symptoms lift or are alleviated for a little bit,
Yeah, absolutely. And but it's continuing on with asking yourself, what is it that I need, and meeting your needs.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I think that's the thing when people come into our space, into our containers, we're always talking the basic things we've got to have covered, especially to lift from things like anxiety and depression, are getting sunlight, are getting movement and getting exercise, eating the right food, getting sleep. Those are the kind of core foundations. Is there any more that you would add to that?
Yeah, social having a
interaction.
nice social life happening.
Yeah.
Feeling social support is probably a better way of putting it. And the other one I like to add is actually either educating yourself on something that you're interested in, or really enjoying an employment that you're passionate about. So it's finding that purpose, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or else that's where it compounds, right? Into becomes the problem, especially if you're living quite unconsciously or unfocused, or you haven't realized that you've outgrown something. I remember being in the corporate world and really loving and thriving in a particular role. But then after, a year of kind of mastering that role, getting really bored or frustrated, being kind of not short-tempered from an angry way, but just, what is it? Just
tolerance, your window of tolerance.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, window of tolerance just getting lower and lower.
Yeah.
For things.
Yes.
So that's one of those signs. Can you recognize within yourself what are the signs that you actually need to grow in that moment?
I think, can I share mine? Can I share my sign?
Yeah.
It was crippling self-doubt in a job. And just going in with that every day. And I remember driving to work one day, and I had just gotten to this point of oh, these thoughts that I'm having in my head of oh, I'm not good at this. I can't do this. Why am I doing this? And it wasn't the job itself, but it absolutely was the environment that I was going into every day. And yeah, that morning driving to work, I was just okay, something's got to give here.
Yeah.
I need to get to the bottom of this immediately.
What you're not changing, you're choosing.
Yes.
But it's also the question of why are we actually putting ourselves in a position to get ourselves into that amount of pain
Mm,
to then make the shift and the
mm,
change.
mm. I think lack of awareness is a huge part of it.
Mm,
Like how many people do drive to work tense in self-criticism,
mm,
wanting to stay in bed for the day,
mm,
just wanting to
mm.
hide under the covers.
And those are all the little signs that they're missing, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
but they, eventually will get up and go anyway
Mm,
and do it again and again and again
mm,
until it gets to that point where like you're almost at like breakdown or severe burnout or,
mm.
that stage where you're basically going to rage quit your job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember I'll tell just the quickest one about one of the worst experiences I had
Mm.
with getting to a point of pain.
Hmm.
I was in a particular corporate job. I um, hadn't taken more than a long weekend
Mm.
in that job for a many number of years. It was never a good time. It was never a convenient time.
Hmm. We can all
And
use that one, can't we? It's just not the right time.
well, that was used by the boss on me towards
Oh,
me.
oh.
Not the other way around.
I'm like, this is
Not the
you.
other way around.
No,
I'm like,
you're being told.
yeah. So I went and booked a trip to Hawaii, went for 2 weeks, and when I came back, I flew to a different state than the one that I was living in. Um, and I met up with one of my best friends for a coffee catch up and some breakfast. And I remember talking at the table, and unconsciously, what ended up playing out was that I blacked out at the table and I was sitting at the table, but my head fell back. I went unconscious. And the
Mm.
next thing I was woken up, there were ambulance there. There was somebody holding like a cold can of Coke against the back of my neck, trying to like cool me down. And I end up going to hospital
Hmm.
because I had put off something that I knew that I was unhappy in that workplace.
Hmm.
But you get stuck in feeling like you're trapped or that you have responsibilities or that you can't leave places, situations, workplaces, relationships. This happens in many common
Yeah.
themes of your life.
Mm.
And it's recognizing the time to leave before it gets that bad.
That bad.
Yeah.
Do you know, and what you've just said, I mean, it really like pinged something off in my
Mm,
mind. I was like, how many people out there with like chronic illness is it
hmm.
actually linked to this exact phenomenon of like,
100%.
n not leaving something that's actually causing you pain until it's too late and it manifests as physical pain?
Correct. Absolutely. Trauma is stored in the body, and
Yeah.
trauma doesn't need to be this big, dramatic life event or
Mm.
big, not even dramatic, but just that big
Yeah,
life
significant.
altering,
Yeah.
significant
Yeah.
event that happens in your life. It can be a buildup of tiny micro things.
Yeah.
It's, for example, in a workplace, it's
Mm.
feeling underappreciated.
Yes.
It's muttering things under your breath or feeling or seeing like a facial reaction from a boss or a colleague
Yeah.
that is frustrated with you or is venting out, their anger, their stress, their pressure onto you as their employee,
Mm.
as the subordinate.
Passive aggressive emails. There's
Correct.
so
Tones of
many.
emails,
Yeah.
all those layers that built up over time.
Hmm.
You're holding that tension in your body. If you don't have a way to release and process that in a healthy way, that's where you continue to end up in pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for you, I mean, you've mentioned that. How did you kind of start to realize like I'm in pain and I
Mm,
need to change
mm.
something?
It was interesting that when I kind of came to in the hospital, there was a nurse who kind of talked to me,
Mm.
who had spoken to my best friend. And, as besties do, they tend to know all the things that are kind of going on
Mm.
or bits and pieces enough to make up and observe what's happening for you. And it was that nurse who kind of said, sounds like the workplace you work at is causing you a lot of stress.
Wow.
And that was kind of like the reflection that I needed in that moment to kind of go, because I just come off a beautiful holiday. Like, I was kind of on a high. I was dreading a bit that I had to go back to work because I just had this great experience, right?
For sure.
Who comes back from a holiday thinking, yes, work, like we all want to go on a holiday, right?
We'd like to live in a permanent
Oh,
working holiday.
absolutely, right? So for me, in that moment when it happened, I couldn't connect the dots as to I've just maybe it was jet lag. Like I was thinking it was something other than what it was. So when that nurse just kind of reflected that back, when I actually got home, I made a 30-day plan that within 30 days, I would, put my resume together and I would start looking and do all the things and start getting my way out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. Sometimes you just need that reflection, like that person to reflect it back to you.
Yeah. And I mean, interestingly, it was someone who's outside of someone who knows you. And for some reason, we sometimes tend to listen to those people more.
I know so many friends right now who, if they are listening, would be like, yes. There's one, yeah, in particular. I'm thinking of you, girl.
You know
You know who you are.
And that's the thing that we've got to actually bring that back in-house. We've got to really do the work to know ourselves. And the work doesn't have to actually be this heavy thing. It becomes heavy because we go into that pain.
Yes.
And therefore we feel those heaviest and darkest emotions.
Because even like with my self-doubt, for example, I went and started doing the work with the help of the coach, and the work was within me. The change had to happen within me. I didn't change my workplace at that time, even though there were lots of things about it that actually weren't healthy, but I was more empowered and I could survive in that environment for a little bit longer until, a few other things were in place, ready to go.
Well, that was it. It's the plan, right?
Yes.
There's actual thinking around it instead of when you're in pain, there's a lot of non-thinking, or there's a lot more in the feelings of just feeling this certain heaviness or this depression or this anxiety or this stress or this overwhelm or this burnout and just simply leaving it at that.
Yeah.
And finding when you're in that state, you feel more overwhelmed at the idea of putting together a plan.
Yeah,
putting together
so
a next
hard.
action step.
Yes.
And it's one, as I say, 1% each day. Just a 1% do better.
Yeah.
And that might look like your first step to get out and start transitioning out might be getting up early and getting some sunlight on your face first thing in the morning.
And I think as well that's like so many, like a lot of this can come from much earlier in our lives where we're used to being surrounded by like a painful environment. And so that's probably why it can be so hard to make those 1%ers for some people is like you just get really used to it. And I know we've talked about this before, but like your nervous system almost gets used to that level of chaos, pain, suffering that's the norm to you. And you've got to create and choose a new norm.
And that's really, really powerful what you just said there, because in those environments that we have grown up in, you weren't the grown up. So you didn't have control.
Yeah, or plan. You had no plan.
Yeah, you had to follow the direction
yes.
of those parents who were in power. They were the authority, they were in control.
Yeah.
There is an acknowledgement that people need to get through, which is that you are the authority on your life. You are the power.
Yes.
In your life.
Yes.
Right. You are in control. You can only control yourself. You can't control other people, situations, or circumstances around you. But situations, circumstances, and people around you can get better when you do the work, when you become more self-aware, when you're more authentic, when you've got your boundaries set, when you're regulated.
Even just having that sense of who you are at your core and, being centered within yourself, being able to go within and do the inner work that you've spent a lot of time probably avoiding or escaping from or, separating yourself from in some way just to keep getting through every day. Like that is so powerful.
And I want to call bullshit to people who are like, I know myself. There is a huge lack of self-awareness and the question that I would really get you to sit with is partly like that, are you happy?
Mm,
Are you happy with who you are and where your life's at and what you're working towards?
mm.
Because the human life experience is that we are always changing, evolving, and growing. And if you're not changing, you're actually choosing that.
Yeah. And the change
Okay.
never stops, really, does it? It's just like the
Correct.
getting to know yourself never stops, which is why that
Correct.
question is such a great one that you can use literally every day for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And you might
Bring
get a different answer every day.
correct. And each year,
Mm,
I mean, it's what do you want for yourself for the next week?
mm,
How do you want to show up?
mm,
No human is perfect, and perfection isn't the goal, but it's, you know, are you fulfilled? Are you grounded? Are you emotionally regulated?
mm.
Are you feeling satisfied in your job, in your career? Is there something itching in the back of your mind that you want to do?
Mm.
If you're really radically honest with yourself, not all of you are going to be so confident in saying, I know who I am.
Yeah. I feel like the more work I do, the less I know the answer to that question. In a way, like,
I feel the possibilities open up.
yes, because
Yeah.
I want to be all of the things. And
Mm.
I can see myself having the potential to do all of the
Mm.
things. And it's like, oh, today, which one?
Mm.
Who is she today?
It sounds like lots of personalities.
I am a multi-layered woman, multi-dimensional woman.
You are. You are. We all are.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But don't leave it to getting yourself in pain. If
Mm,
you are, and there are going to be moments that you have in life, you have relationship breakdowns, you have job losses, you have family dynamics that are just not improving that you need help with, and they have caused you pain. And sitting in either of our spaces in a container is a very healthy move to connect with a professional and,
yes.
and seek that help. First
Yeah.
and foremost, let's call that out.
Mm, life-changing.
However, if you're needing to constantly do that throughout your life for everything, and it has to get to that problem, then it is a self-reflection piece on how do I become more self-aware? How do I develop the skills of having boundaries? How do I develop more emotional intelligence, more emotional maturity? How do I start going after the things that I want? How do I actually make those plans and start achieving so that my life is on more of a path that I am satisfied with, that I am fulfilled with, where less of the problems build up? There are
Mm,
always going to be problems, but less of those big problems that just knock you off your feet
mm.
come up.
Yeah, so it's like you're not sitting in pain
Mm,
as often, as
mm,
frequently,
mm.
as intensely, perhaps.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. Great question to reflect on.
Mm.
Mm.
We love good questions. We love a good brain teaser.
Yes, yes.
That is the work, honestly, sitting with the questions that have been raised here today and having that moment of self-honesty with yourself,
Mm,
and then deciding, do I need to reach out to a therapist or a coach to help me develop these skills and have the patience and the time to do that?
yeah.
There is not a quick fix to learning yourself. You are a
No,
forever human being,
correct.
and you have to unlearn the things that you have built around yourself that you don't love, that you
Yeah,
don't like,
definitely,
so
definitely.
but it's a beautiful experience.
Oh, there's nothing like it. I
Mm,
call it a lifestyle.
it is a
It's a
lifestyle.
lifestyle choice.
It is. I
Mm,
would agree.
mm.
I love that.
Come aboard this
Cool.
type of lifestyle with us.
Yeah. And you can do that by clicking
Yeah.
subscribe or like on this episode
Mm,
of our podcast. What you are not changing, you are choosing. Really sit self-honestly with that.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Thank you guys. We'll see you next week.
Bye for now.